because happiness is a big theme for my audience. It's something that my audience cares a lot about. And I picked out something that I wanted to read that you say in your book. And you say, one of the chapters in your 21 Lessons for 21st Century is happiness equals reality minus expectations, right? Happiness equals reality minus expectations. And I want to dive into that because I want to ask you, how should we set expectations? We all have expectations. I have expectations. Doing this podcast, I have expectations. When you think about anyone investing in their job, they have expectations. When someone starts a relationship, they have expectations. What is your take on how we should form, set, and create our expectations for happiness?
Oh, that's a big one to start with.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that we need to relax control a bit. I mean, not to say to ourselves, these should be my expectations. The first step is actually to familiarize yourself with what you already expect and with the internal processes that have generated these expectations. Because usually most of us know extremely little about really what's going on inside us and about what forms our opinions, our desires, our expectations. There is a general tendency to identify with whatever pops up in your mind. And we are encouraged a lot by our culture and by the key ideologies of the age, whether it's liberal democracy, whether it's capitalism, consumerism, to just identify with our inner voice, with our, all these slogans that just do what feels good, just connect to your heart and all these things. And people mistake it to mean just identify, just look inside you and the first thing that comes up, identify with that. And my advice would be to really take the time to explore what is happening inside you and where do all these things really come from. So much of our expectations and our desires, they don't reflect any inner truth self. They reflect a million manipulations done on us either by external forces or even by internal forces that we know so little about. So before we reach the point when we write ourselves the list of items, this is my agenda for life, this is my expectation from life, take time, a long time, to first of all familiarize yourself with what is actually happening inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on. I completely agree with you. I was sharing with you earlier that I was training to become an investment banker and work in business growing up. And then I got to a point where I looked at that and I was like, is that even me? Like, why do I even want to do that? And I realized because in the part of society that I grew up in, that was the most glorified role. Mm-hmm. So the people that I was surrounded by had made that seem as the peak role or job that someone in our society could attain. Mm-hmm. And so actually it wasn't my goal or dream. It was just the dreams and goals of people around me.
Yeah, that's a very old story. Throughout human history, you're always influenced by your friends, your family, the culture around, and much of what people took to be their innermost desires and expectations, it actually came from outside. Mm-hmm. Today, it's even more extreme because we are increasingly acquiring technologies that enable external agents, whether corporations or government or whatnot, to really hack the human mind and hack the human brain and manipulate us in ways which were never possible before, which makes it's even more urgent than ever to really get to know yourself. The advice, know yourself, it's the oldest advice in the book. You go back thousands of years, you meet Socrates or Buddha or Confucius, this is what they'll tell you. Get to know yourself. It's the most important thing in life. But there is something new today. What's new today is that for the first time in history, you have real competition. If in the time of Buddha, you didn't make the effort to know yourself, I'm too busy, so you missed enlightenment. But you didn't face any competition out there because the kings and the aristocracy and the merchants in the time of Buddha, they couldn't get in your head. But today you have real competition. You may not have the time to get to know yourself because you're too busy. I'm too busy with the family, with the work, with whatever. But there are people who have the time and the money to get to know you. That's their business, to really get to know you. Their entire business model is based on that, or their entire political model is based on that. And so you now really have competition from these corporations and governments. And it's a very simple equation or a very simple idea. If they get to know you a little better than you know yourself, game over. They can manipulate and control you, and you will not even realize it, because the easiest people to manipulate are the people who believe in free will. The people who believe that their thoughts and desires and expectations, they reflect some authentic inner self. And they don't question, is this really the case?
Right. So how much does that person have free will? How much do you think a person does have free will?
I would say, as a first approximation, extremely little. I mean, I don't want to delve too deeply into the argument about the theoretical possibility of free will. If you want, we can go there.
I want to go wherever you want to go.
But as a first approximation, I would say that even if you believe that free will is possible theoretically in some situations, you should at least acknowledge that 99% of decisions don't reflect your free will. They reflect something else. So I don't mind even conceding the philosophical point. Let's say that there is free will, but free will is not something you have. Free will is something you need to struggle for. And the wrong idea about free will is that I have free will. Any thought that pops in my mind, any desire that I have, this is my free will. So it is sacred and it represents something sublime. And this is nonsense. This is not the case. Maybe if you work really very hard, you would reach a point when at least some of the decisions in your life will reflect freedom. But it's not something you can just take for granted. Now, there are a lot of forces in the world which encourage us to have this simplistic idea that anything that pops in the mind is the reflection of my free will. It comes most notably in the economic sphere, from the whole consumerist and capitalist system, which it's built on the premise that the customer is always right. I mean, when you talk to the big corporations or to some business magnates, and you ask them about their practices and about problematic things they do, their final line of defense is always the customer is always right. Yes, we are doing these things, but the customers are buying it. And the customers are the number one authority. This is their free will. If the customers want it, who are we or who is you to tell the customers that they are wrong? Are you some big brother that knows better than them? So this is like the final line of defense. The customer is always right. And this is based in a way on the idea of free will, that the will of the customer represents this sublime, force that manifests itself through your desires. Like, I want this brand of cornflakes. Amazing. That's human free will in action. And it's the mystery of the universe manifests itself. Like in that moment in the supermarket that I stand and I see these two brands and how to choose, I choose this brand. The mystery of the universe. It isn't the mystery of the universe. We know today a lot about what's really happening in your brain, in your mind, when you make this choice. And it's increasingly becoming easier and easier to manipulate these choices. Mm-hmm. And again, the easiest people to manipulate are those who think that when they choose this brand in the supermarket, they are exercising their free will.
So what does one do when they're being bombarded with all of that information?
The first thing is just take time off. Then you ask yourself, what do I do in this time off? So I would say different things probably work best for different people. But I would say two things in general about all these things. Whatever works for you, do it quickly, because you don't have much time. I mean, there is this race going on. As we now talk, there are these corporations and governments that are busy trying to hack you. And you need to stay a few steps ahead of them. And the other thing is, it won't be so much fun. I mean, some people have this idea that a journey of inner exploration is a fun journey. Oh, I'll discover all these amazing things about myself and what a good person I am. And I will have these wonderful experiences of bliss and peacefulness and oneness with the universe. And sometimes it happens. I don't say it never happens, but a lot of that is painful experiences. It's boring experiences, like you have to go through a desert of boredom. And one of the, I think, biggest obstacles for people today in the world of the 21st century, I don't know how it was, 2000 years ago, but today I would say that the inability to deal with boredom is one of our greatest weaknesses. And in almost any meaningful journey, you have to go through boredom. Whether it's you're traveling to another country and you have to spend some time in the airport, or whether it's you're having a conversation with somebody. I found from my experience that if you're in a conversation that doesn't allow space for boredom, it will never reach anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same when you go to explore yourself. Like, I don't know, not necessarily in meditation even, like you want to, you go to use sport. So, okay, you start, I'll go on a hike. And you start going, and after 3 hours, you feel thirsty, and it's hot, and it's inconvenient, and there is nothing to see, and you say, oh, forget that. I'll go back and watch some movies. And you'll never reach the interesting parts of the journey, either the geographical journey or the kind of inner journey of exploration, if you don't allow yourself, if you don't have the discipline to go through these boring and sometimes painful and sometimes scary bits.